One of the biggest problem with the builders is that, they wear a lot of hats. They are, also the CFOs of their business. They're also, an admin of the business, especially when they are growing, when they are, in their infancy, building that business, right? And so together with that, they're also the BDMs in their business, right? Because they don't have a big sales team, who's running the business. And so while they are doing quoting, etc., they're also doing the business development. And so in order for them to hold on to good trades, they need consistent business. So the trades keeps jumping around and they can't control the quality. One of the reasons that they would do a builder JV is because there is so much quantity of work that comes in, they can hold on to their labor and control the prices by giving them more work, consistent work over, 1 year, 2 years. And so where I've seen this work really, really well is it's a young builder, it's an efficient builder, understands the finances really well, and they would, bring this out, or they will, shake hands and start doing this with you. And their mindset is predominantly, I'm going to have a dedicated pipeline of work with this builder JV, and then I'll do some more work on the side in relation to, say, townhouse development, etc., with someone else at an arm's length transaction. And that would be more money that I'm going to use to feed my family or pay the overheads. And so all of the builder JV basically becomes the capital that gets reinjected back and back into the business, and you grow exponentially fast. Of course, you would not see experienced builders doing this. You would not see a builder who has been in the market for 20 odd years, doing this, because there is no interest from their perspective. Okay, and the most important point, Cheryl, that you make is, if you don't structure this right, there could be 1,000 things that can go wrong with builder JVs. Now, of course, on paper, everything looks beautiful. Everything looks like heaven. But when you start thinking about the intricacies, when you start thinking about, okay, what are the downside risks on some of these things, what you're doing is you're going into a JV with a builder, you're absorbing builder's liability. Okay, and so you need to understand this quite importantly, because as soon as you absorb a builder's liability, even in a single joint venture trust, and that trust does the build because the builder is there, for example, ultimately what happens is that 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the track, any claims comes in on that house and that builder has closed the company, you are there in the mix. Okay, it basically, your name is on the line, your guarantees are on the line. And I've seen this happen myself to my own uncle, where he was pulled out on one of these things, of course not through my company, and he copped a bill of almost $140,000 almost 7 years after the build was done. And the builder had disappeared by then, and they changed the name. They were still there, but they changed the names. And and so those risks are definitely there, and people need to understand how to structure this and how to keep the builder at an arm's length transaction still while doing a builder JV. And that's definitely possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else is there? Is there anything else that we can talk about in relation to the builder JV side of things?
I'm just thinking, just to be really, again, coming up to the joint venture agreement, getting really clear in terms of, when you're doing your quoting and all of that at the very beginning, what variations, agreements around when things change, what amount of equity needs to be put in, that sort of stuff. But that comes down to any sort of agreement that you're going into. I do harp on about agreements, because when the poop hits the fan, that's often the thing you go back to. My question is, in a builder JV, do you then negate the need for a build contract?
Oh, no. See, I mean, from a serviceability perspective, the bank wants to see the builder, right? And so unless you are cash funding the complete build, which is, in certain scenarios you may, if you are going to the bank for lending the build, you are basically looking at an arm's length transaction for the build, right? Because they want the builder to be separate from the developer. And so it's important. I think one of the things that people work with the banks is the builder can still issue you a full price contract, and that 15-20% that they're putting, for example, as a margin, basically comes back to you as cash flow, right, to the same project. And that's why the scalability is there, right? Because say, for example, an actual cost of the house is maybe 500, and the builder is, say, charging you 580, he would write the contract for 580. In some cases, over exaggerated to 615 or 620 or 650, right? And that money coming from the bank basically becomes the cash flow for the next project, or, for them to scale up and, move faster. And so again, those little opportunities of, getting hands on that money is quite the key on, scaling some of these things. But of course, the risk is there, right? Unfortunately, the builders are not the best developers. Yeah. And so if you overcapitalize on any of these, if you think that you can sell this X, Y, and Z, I've seen, builder JVs really struggling and failing where they were waiting for the market to flip. They were waiting for the market to move, and, they build that growth into the numbers of the GRV. And so you need to understand that that's not the case. That can't happen, when you're doing builder JVs. And so there would be times where some of the properties you might make only, 80K or 100K, and there would be other times where you would be making $200,000 and $250,000 because you're trying to catch the tide. And so you're not timing the market. What you're doing is you're letting market come at play while you're doing this. And so there would be properties that would catch instant growth on some of these instances as well. Especially you're working in like greenfield suburbs, you're not looking at demolishing the house and rebuilding it in majority of the scenarios. Okay, you don't see builder JVs happening into duplexes, etc., all of those things, because the exposure is slightly bigger there. And no bank would give you the lending unless you are fully cashed up and you're doing it on cash completely. That's a completely different scenario.